guys, welcome back to episode
4.
5. High five.
High five. Episode 5. Can't remember what episode 4 was, but it was a banger.
What was episode 4? Anyway, let's not digress.
No.
Okay, yeah, so this week we're kind of, I know, as if you've been listening to all of our episodes so far, we're kind of on a little bit of a journey at the moment. We're trying out a lot of new things, crystals, manifesting, therapy, and this week we want to talk about shadow work mainly.
I think like the theme of the series and perhaps our whole lives, and especially like the Lifestyle CEO as a mission, is to kind of help people become the best versions of themselves. And I guess we obviously, as part of that, are defining what that looks like for us. And obviously we're not suggesting that there's a one-way ticket to becoming the best version of yourselves, but I certainly think there's a lot of practices that like we're experiencing now, or we're finding and exploring, that we're passing on, that will help people on that kind of mission. So yeah, as Ellie said, we've covered off maybe more of the positive aspects of becoming the best version of yourself. So what habits you need, what routines you need, you know, the crystals you can use to really bring out that higher self, the books you can read, etc. But I think a big part of it is, which a lot of people forget, I think, is actually looking at people call it your shadow self, but I guess it's like your blockers, your insecurities, your self-esteem issues, your insecurity issues, those sorts of things.
Yeah, so I think this week we kind of both realised that, and I think especially you, isn't it? Like, we both kind of realised we're doing all this work, we're doing all these positive things, you know, setting our goals, reflecting on our goals, but that's never gonna actually help if you don't go deeper.
Well, I think and you'll reach a plateau. Like you'll get to a certain level and you won't be able to rise above that. Yeah, you'll be walking your 10,000 steps, you'll be at the gym, you'll be drinking your water, but you'll come up against a lot of kind of blockages where you're like, right, okay, there's something deeper going on here that I need to like unveil or unleash before I can rise up to the next level.
Yeah, because you'll be doing all these things and you'll still be kind of feeling like a little bit like you're not living your best life. You're not living up there where why am I watching everyone else do this and they're doing so well, and it's like internal blockers. So yeah, we're gonna just like dedicate this podcast to talking about that and our ways of like helping with that. Again, as always, we are just experimenting. This has worked for us. If this doesn't work for you, that we will like say lots of different things you can try, but
we do, and we'd love to hear like your take on things or other things that you've tried maybe in working on your shadow self, or your whatever we're calling it, shadow self, and
maybe you haven't even realised that, because if I'm being honest, until Christina kind of was talking to me about it a few weeks ago, like I've never even heard the term shadow work, shadow self. I was like, what the hell? What are you talking about? What is this new thing you're bringing to me this week? First it's crystals. Now.
But I think it's like, it is, shadow work is such a like term used in the spiritual world, and it's like that's not what we're focusing on, but it does explain it quite well, I think, because in your head you have a vision of like maybe your negative traits. But it's not necessarily that. It's more about like what's holding you back, what's causing you self-esteem issues, what's blocking you from like, you know, maybe taking the next step, or like, you know, for an example, it's like, do you have specific money blocks? So like people, I think, and I do think everyone has this, which they won't realise, it's like they'll get to a certain level and feel like internally, oh, well, that's enough. Like either I don't deserve more, or I shouldn't have more, it's not fair, or there's no more left for me to have. And it's like, you won't even realise that dialogue's going on, but really that can properly stop you from taking the next step. So like, say you like think 20k a month is ridiculously over the top, or like, oh, that's more than enough to have, then you'll never reach the next level. Do you know what I mean? And it's very like, it's such an internal thing, which will come from like, you know, how your childhood was, how money was taught to you, what money mindsets you're used to being around. And it's like unpicking all of that and being like, right, how do I unpick that, unlearn that, and relearn things to help me reach the next best version of myself?
Yeah, I think that's so true, because I'm doing some work on like money blocks and yeah, just in my spiritual journey, and I feel like there is a certain point where you're on, it's like surface level, isn't it? So you're like, okay, I feel like I've got money blocks. Okay, let me just sit here and manifest money. Like, you've got to go 3 steps further back. You're literally on the surface, you're scratching the surface. Now I've got to sit here and be like, okay, so why do I feel like I don't deserve money? Okay, well, when I was 5, like and it is obviously,
it's a lot of work.
Yeah, that's obviously just such an abbreviated version,
but I think that's such a good point, because it's like, you don't really, and you have to consciously do this work, because every one of us every day will feel like a bit anxious about something, or say you're doing a pitch for a client or a business plan or something, and you'll just, if you start tuning into it, you'll start hearing these things where you'll be like, or you'll feel slightly uncomfortable about doing the pitch because for whatever reason you feel like you don't deserve it, or you won't win, or you'll be doing your business plan and you'll be looking at the numbers and something inside you will be like, oh no, that's not going to be possible, but you won't hear it until you really tune in. And I think that's the first step to take, is like, switch your brain on to noticing all of these little niggly feelings within you.
Call yourself out, yeah.
And it's a lot of work, and it might be that you need to focus on one thing at a time, so like business first or money first, and then maybe health or relationships or friendships or whatever, you know.
And we did actually a podcast on this in series 1 about your fears, and like, it's kind of actually, thinking back to it now, it is a bit touching on this as well, but just obviously different kind of wording. But we did an exercise in series 1 about literally writing down something like, okay, a goal that you haven't achieved, because this could be a great way to start off with deciding where you need to start. So if, say, like, I remember I was talking about my stock and like basically pushing the button on that, and it kind of just all went down to, I took it back. Obviously it had to do with money, letting go of that amount of money, really committing to the business, like properly giving up my stable job and my safe career and my stable life to just plunge into this. Like, it's terrifying, like, even though it looks so glamorous when you run a business, and you want to look great in front of everyone, you have a successful business, but actually, like, it comes almost back to like imposter syndrome as well, and you've got to go back and work back, and I literally sat and wrote down my fear, and then I was like, right, why am I feeling like this? And I went into such detail. And if you really are honest with yourself and you really look deep down, you dig deep down and write it down. You don't even have to do it with like a therapist. You don't need to let anyone else know. No one's ever going to see this piece of paper you're writing down. Just be so honest with yourself. What it comes down to. It could come down to lessons you've been taught as a child. It could come down to like, you were really poor growing up, and you're kind of finding it hard to let go of money because you've always had that fear that it's always going to run out,
or it's been like implanted in you that you should have a savings account. But I feel like this is a big one for us. I think is like, having savings is so important for a rainy day, but then when the opportunities come up, like starting a business or the opportunity to travel or whatever it may be, it's like, oh, should we spend our money on this? And it's like, yes, that is the exact thing you are saving to spend your money on. I think everyone has in their head that they're just saving for a house deposit, but it's like, but what about all these other massive things that you could do with life, like traveling, like starting your own business, like investing in something, whatever it may be. I think, and it is overcoming those like things that you've probably been taught at such a young age, which you might not even believe in, but you've just got them like embedded in your psyche almost. Yeah,
and it's also obviously like there's many things you can have the shadow work on, but obviously just on the topic of money, like we get taught things about money from school, parents, life growing up, but that was such a different time as well. Like, when our parents were buying a house, they were about 70k. Now they're like 700k, but our salary hasn't reflected that increase. So a lot of people now are just renting for longer and working up their career and focusing on that before they do like shove a load of money into a house deposit. So that's another way of like kind of releasing the fear is kind of being common sense, isn't it?
Coming to terms with the differences of now.
Yeah, and maybe just being a bit be honest with yourself, be like, no, and trust yourself. No, it's a different time. Like, I feel like this is the right direction for me.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point as well. It's like it's coming back to this 9-to-5 culture and breaking that habit, which is obviously what the Corporate Dropouts is all about. But actually, as well as like forgetting about the standard way of working, it's also forgetting about the standard way of living. So like purchasing a house, or, you know, finding a partner, having kids, getting married, settling down, like all of those things don't have to happen now. Like they didn't have to happen before, but I think more so now people are happy to embrace like trying different things and like doing life differently and seeing what works for them versus what society says. And it is a really tough thing to like overcome, and this is where I think the shadow work comes up really much, because even though you could be like, oh, well, I know I'm different. I know I can embrace change. I know I can do things differently. But then when it comes up, you'll notice that it's either you're slightly holding back, or it's causing arguments, or it's causing you anxiety, or it's causing something within you to just feel a bit off. And that's where you're like bringing up your shadow issues. It's like you need to just really dial into those and break that fear down.
Yeah, and that is when, like, it's going to be hard now. You're listening to the podcast and thinking, right, where do I need to do some shadow work? Like, that's hard to just come up with off the top of your head. It's in, like Christina said, in situations where you realise you're acting out of fear and acting out of like insecurities. That's when you've got to stop, note that down, and then that's when you go and reflect on those sort of fears. And like Christina and I both have counselling, and that's another amazing way to dig deep in a safe environment. I think that's the key, is you're feeling safe. So either do it with yourself in your journal, or do it in front of like a professional and ask them to guide you. I mean, naturally you do get guided down your past traumas. And actually, like, I asked my counsellor this last week, because I'm just I guess I'm just like an analysis. I need to know like exactly what's going to happen and how I'm going to get there and how long it's going to take me to get there and stuff. So I was like, but how does, like, when we speak in our sessions, we just like, I just basically tell stories and like you go over your childhood and stuff, and he kind of like asks the questions and makes comments, and I'm like, but how do I like improve, like, because like I'm not like going home with homework doing exercises. That's how I feel like I improve and I learn. And am I going to get an exam at the end of this counselling session? Do you know what I mean?
Do I pass or fail?
I need to know, what score am I? Am I an A-star student? And he was like, no, like the work gets done when you leave the sessions and you reflect
and you start thinking about
it and you start calling yourself out.
It's like self-awareness, isn't it?
Exactly. It's all about self-awareness. It's all, because I'm just thinking, like, I go to these 1 hour sessions every week and I'm like, okay, so do I make all my progress in that 1 hour a week?
No.
Like, should I have 5 sessions a week and get there faster? But it's not. It's like, yeah, like you said, it's you're learning about yourself. Your self-awareness is growing.
And like little things will implant in your brain that you'll hear at your counselling, that you'll just suddenly recognise, like on a random Tuesday morning or something, you'll be like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Mine's a bit different, I think, because I'm doing CBT, because I'm very like that. I need to know, like, what is the process I'm going through to unlearn and relearn and whatever. So CBT is quite good for that, because it's very practical, and actually everything we learn in therapy, and I think everyone should have a therapist, if I'm honest, if you can afford it. And it's not about like if you've had a really traumatic event or you suffer really strongly with anxiety or whatever. I think actually just as we become adults, or, you know, especially women, actually, like as you take on more and more roles and you just start like trying to figure out who you are, that therapy and that 1 hour session a week or whatever it is, just to like dial back into yourself and like check in and just have some space and quiet time for you, I just think is incredible. But yeah, so with CBT, one of the things we get taught is like, as soon as a feeling comes up, so for me it's anxiety, so as soon as I start feeling anxious, I have to write it down in my like thought diary around like what the fear is, what situation I'm in, what I'm feeling, and then what I'm doing. So like anxiety specifically has really like specific thought patterns, so it'd be like you're catastrophizing, or you're thinking in black and white, or you're mind reading, or you're fortune telling. So it can be like if you start thinking, oh my god, I'm anxious because I think this meeting tomorrow is going to go wrong, and this and it's going to happen, and blah blah blah. And then if you just stop that thought pattern and think, oh no, I'm just thinking in black and white, and I'm just catastrophizing, and I'm fortune telling, and then it just takes the the fear right out of it, and then you can start thinking, well, why do I think about, like, why do I feel like that, and where's that fear coming from? And you know, it's like those tiny moments, if you start making note of them, you'll just see this whole thought pattern, and you'll just have it right in front of you and be like, oh, okay,
yeah, totally.
So it's so obvious, like all of my issues are clearly coming from like a self-esteem thing or a insecurity thing, and it's sort of like working on that, you know.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, it's kind of like taking your thought and recognizing whether that's like factual or is it just based on emotions. So, you know, anxiety can make us think in many different ways. Oh my God, like they will hate me, I'm going to do this business pitch and I already know that I'm not going to get it. Well, that's not a fact. No one can tell you that. No one can predict the future. Like, you don't know that's going to happen. That's totally you acting on your emotions, so you can disregard that thought.
And that's kind of where it then collides with the more spiritual world, where if you're putting that energy out, then probably the likelihood is that you're not going to win that pitch, because you're putting it out that you're not feeling ready, or clearly there's some work you need to do on your self-confidence, and you're going to
self-sabotage,
exactly,
aren't you?
So it's like that's a perfect example of, you need to sit yourself down and be like, right, why do I feel like I'm not going to win, and how can I change my mindset? Because I think a lot of us don't realise how negatively we talk to ourselves every day. Like, I definitely didn't realise until I sat down and I was like, my God, like all I do is beat myself up. Like, I never sit down and be like, oh, great job today, or like, well done on that, or whatever. I only kind of speak to myself if it's like, that's going to go wrong, or you're not doing this good enough, or whatever, you know. It's just like so funny.
And they always tell you to speak to yourself like you'd speak to your younger self or a child.
Yeah.
And that's interesting, isn't it? Because you would, or like even just like someone you care about. Well, I mean, sometimes we do speak to people we care about are not very nice, but you wouldn't say to your like baby or whatever, you'd be like, oh my God, like how have you not done all this work, and we said we'd do all this work and you've not done it, now you're just going to ruin your whole life. And this poor baby would be like, what?
It's so true. Like, if you just, it really is, that first step is really just starting to tune in on what you're saying to yourself and every day. And it's like, it's actually unbelievable when you start tuning in, because you're just like, fuck, like no wonder I feel shit.
Yeah, no, literally. There's another thing that I read about, and it's about living to your values. But so we all have our own values, don't we? And we all have our kind of like morals and things we like to live by and things we preach to other people. Well, there's a really good exercise in like listening to yourself and making sure you're not acting as a hypocrite and you're living to your values that you're putting out to the rest of the world. So like, for instance, like, oh, I hate it when people eat with their mouth open, and then you're eating with your mouth open. Like, so like tiny things like that can really help, like bring yourself back to earth, ground yourself, like know what, if you're living to your true values, then you're instantly going to feel more self-aware, and you're going to recognize when you're like not acting as your true self. And again, that really helps with grounding yourself, looking into yourself, like coming to terms with things that you're, because unconsciously if you're putting out like, I'd hate it when people do this, or I would never do that, and then actually you go and do it, even if you don't even realize you're doing it subconsciously in your head, it's like, oh wait, hang on, like we're being double standards here, we're being hypocritical. And that's again like a self-destructive way of bringing your confidence down, making you feel like an imposter.
I think that's a really good point, actually, because people, I remember this question I think it was a journal prompt at the beginning of the year, and I was like, I don't actually know what my values are. Like, that's such a weird question to ask. I don't think many people consider it. And I was like, what are my values? And I was trying to really overcomplicate it. Like, am I an environmentalist? And I was like, wait, I'm not a business. No. Like, what's going on? And it was like, I can remember doing values at work, like for the marketing department. It was like corporate social responsibility. Like, we are this and that. And it was like, what the hell is of personal value? But I think one of my core values is like turning up as my best self every day, like in whatever that means. And then I guess, and then I always feel out of alignment if I'm not living that value. And it doesn't mean turning up and like having to work 50 million hours a day and like do this and do that. It's like turning up as my best self might mean resting, relaxing, and like reflecting, or it might mean, you know, taking a week off, or I don't know, it just, whatever makes you feel good and in alignment. And I think that's, people like figure out what their values are, and like one of my values is really helping other people and like empower them and make them feel great and good, and that they can do anything they want. Like, that's a really core value of mine. And I think it's sort of just remembering that, and it doesn't matter if your job doesn't necessarily entail that exact thing. it's more about like, yeah, kind of being true to yourself. And even if you work in, you know, a finance team, but you love empowering people, then make sure you're empowering your team every day or empowering yourself. And it's just, and then you'll just feel much happier about the work you're putting out into the world every day, I think.
Yeah, I actually think that's a brilliant exercise too, like your values. Again, I would say don't even show anyone, because you need to get really true. Yeah, don't put like...
I care about the animal. Yeah. I mean, you might care about, I care about animals, but is it one of your core values of how you show up every day?
Yeah, I think I would like I think something that I definitely want to work on is like turning up as like who I am, like my true self, and not, sometimes I think we all do. We enter situations and we'll just be like, okay, right, I'm going to this really high business meeting. They were in like a skyscraper, they're in the city, like, okay, I'm gonna turn up and be like all dressed in black and just like no makeup,
like boss bitch.
Just like and then I'm like, hang on, like that's not who I am.
Why would I change my personality to fit the bill?
Yeah, I know, and I always catch myself doing it. I'm like, ooh, like literally, I think this morning I was thinking, oh, I won't wear my long socks, I'll wear my short socks, because maybe my long socks are just a bit like in your face, and the people that I'm with probably will be like, why is she wearing that? I'm like, oh my god, like just wear whatever socks you want to wear. But it's things like that. It's like, yeah, that's when, because since I've learned how to do this exercise, I do catch myself out. I'm like, I would tell my friends to always be themselves, and if people don't like it, then piss off.
But you're not telling yourself.
But why do I not tell myself that?
I think that's a good point as well, and this is a problem everyone faces, is we always seek validation from an external source, and we never actually think, are we proud of ourselves and how we're turning up? So like, I think people probably work all the hours under the sun because they think they're going to get validation from their boss. But then if you look internally and think, but do I want to be the sort of person that all they care about is working? No. So like, you're not actually, then you're beating yourself up internally, because and you'll probably never get the validation you're seeking from external. And it's like, we all need to learn to just validate ourselves. I think that's such a big point. And after you stop caring, it's not about not caring what other people think, it's about not only
taking it to heart.
Yeah, and it's not only seeking validation from an external source, and it's being happy to validate yourself. I think that's the biggest thing. And once you do that, so many things will just break away from you, and you'll just stop worrying so much, which I think worry probably causes a lot of people to not do the things that they really want to do.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, again, like we've talked about this book before, but I really think the Positively Wealthy by Emma Mumford book, it's a 33-day course, but I think that really helps. That talks through it. You do a different challenge every day. We spoke about it on episode 2 of this series, but I think that's really helped me do a lot of shadow work, and you do a lot of like journaling, and it's literally like you read 5 pages a day. She gives you a little task, you go and do that, and then it literally will take 15 minutes of your day every morning. But I'd honestly really recommend that book. It is spiritual, it is a lot of crystals and a lot of manifesting, but I think just go in with an open mind. And I think if you are feeling like you're having blocks, which I definitely was a few months ago, and you are as well. And actually you did it a few months ago. Christina obviously introduced me to the book. And now I'm just preaching about it myself.
Well, that's good.
But you even said to me the other day, actually, when you're finished, I want it back. I want to do it again. Yeah, I do. And that is...
I think, and this is, there's another book by Denise Duffield Thompson, I think her name is, and that's all about, it's called Get Rich Lucky Bitch, and that's obviously specifically about money blocks. But again, it says like you will keep having to come back to it, because you'll do one layer of shadow work, so we're going down, and then you'll reach that plateau, you've done all that, and then you'll reach a new level, and so you've got to keep coming back to it. And it's like a lifelong exercise. But I was reading something this morning about this as well, and it was like, you can't just go deep into like really figuring out your flaws and like really calling out your flaws straight away, because you might end up re-traumatizing yourself. So if you start saying to yourself, well, I have a real insecurity problem and this is why, and then you sort of get lost in the darkness of it all, like you kind of need to do it in layers. So as things start coming up for you just in everyday life, don't sit there for like 3 days and be like, oh my god, I'm just such a terrible person, I need to get into my shadow self, and like cause yourself to be like
never gonna heal.
Yeah, just like like it is a case of even just have either on your phone or your little diary with you, and just like as you start feeling a fear coming up or an anxiety or a blocker, just write it down and then come back to it when you journal in the evening. Like I really feel like journaling every single day on stuff that's come up for you is so important. And then you'll just start seeing more and more and more, and you'll get deeper and deeper, and then eventually we'll all be perfectly healed beings.
I know that's the aim, but I get that's the other thing is like, okay, it comes back to what we were talking about, goals, is like, don't set yourself to be the perfect human. Like, don't think like, I'm going to do this counselling, then I'll be the perfect partner, and I'll be the perfect boss, and I'll be the perfect person. It's like, it's because again, this is what I asked my counsellor. I was like, so when will I be fixed? And he's like,
not the goal.
It's not. He said like your whole life. It will take your whole lifetime.
But it's not about being fixed. It's about feeling happy in who you are, I think. And it's like, for me, my anxiety can be so debilitating, and that's why I want to be like, I need a way to fix this. And I guess for you, it's about like not allowing your insecurities or whatever it is to affect your relationships or to affect your work. And it's sort of that. So it's not actually like a destination you're getting to. It's making the journey easier.
And more enjoyable as well. And like, I think it's just, you're just trying to find peace. And I think peace, you know, you get peace and you lose peace and you get it back, and that's the exciting part of life, isn't it? But I think it's just learning. Everyone's going to go through shit, everyone's going to probably feel anxious at some point, but it's all you're doing like is learning like your triggers and how to deal with them. And that's exactly what the shadow work does. And I'd say like therapy basically is shadow work, and like we said, not everyone can afford it, but just journaling.
And there's so many tools online as well. Like I feel like there's a lot of online tools that you can use. I don't know what they are, but even if you use like Insight Timer to do a kind of therapy based meditation that sort of takes you down and asks you questions, or online there are so many journal prompts. Like just if you type in, you know, journal prompts for anxiety or journal prompts for whatever it is, and then it will come up with a list of questions that you just need to sit and ask yourself. And there's so many books out there, like honestly, I think we could all be therapists. Insight
Timer, brilliant app. Like I use that every night. I do sleep meditation. But I want to take back what I just said about not everyone can afford therapy, because I think we've spoke about this before, but I think working on yourself is just like going to the gym. It's like you pay for the gym, okay, whatever you pay for the gym, £30 a month. Well, you can get a therapist you can get an online therapy session for that. If you did that once a month, that would help you. I think it's about like prioritizing things. Like, do you want to go on that night out, or do you want to get therapy? That's true, because I mean, I could say that I probably couldn't really afford it if I was saying to myself, I'm spending 60 quid a week, because that's what mine costs, on a new pair of shoes or whatever. I'm like, well, I don't really need that, but I need to spend 60 quid a week on food every week. Well, I do need that. And it's just where do you place your priority? Priority.
But I think it's a journey as well. I think for us, like we started with, I mean, obviously there's a reason that we sort of looked into therapy initially, but I think crazy
family.
I certainly started with reading books like a long time ago. I think and I've always been quite interested in psychology anyway, but like my self-development journey started maybe 2 years ago with reading loads of books and like researching, doing courses, and then naturally I came to therapy because I was sort of ready to take that next step. So I think it is a case of like, start doing some research. So if you feel like, if you're an entrepreneur and you've hit a real plateau in terms of your income, look at doing a money block book. So either do the Denise Duffield Thomas book or the Amanda Francis's Rich as Fuck book. They're really good for money blockages. Or if you're looking at, you know, having more self-compassion and more confidence, then I'm reading one at the moment called Radical Confidence by Lisa Bilyeu. And that's really good. So like there's so much out there about literature where you can just start your journey on making yourself better in whatever area you're looking for.
Yeah, and I think if you're not a reader, there's so much on YouTube.
Podcasts. Oh my God, love
podcasts. This one.
Don't leave.
Yeah, I think everyone's like really jumped onto podcasts recently.
Since the pandemic.
Yeah, because I think they're a great way of like I don't know what it is, but an audio book is just not cool, is it? A podcast is cool.
I love an audio book.
I know, but I think podcasts are more trendy. People are like jumping on the podcast trend.
I think.
Like, well, they can be
on a walk.
And you know, you get to hear your favourite celebs or your favourite people like talk, and you want to be like that person, so you listen or whatever it is. But I think podcasts are really good, and YouTube if you're not into reading. And I think we all started from somewhere. We all like picked up that first book, listened to that first podcast, and just you do things as you're ready.
I would also say, and I think this is common when anyone finds they are wanting to go into the self-development journey, is you're probably struggling with your purpose. That tends to be what people look into when they're kind of feeling a bit lost, or they're not lost, but they're sort of hitting a plateau. So mine was like, I'd been in business for like 4 years by this, like whenever I started on this, and I was just a bit like, okay, like I don't really feel like I'm, you know, leveling up now. I've kind of done this initial steps, and now I want to like take myself to the next level. And as we always say, like being an entrepreneur is 90% about your mindset and about being the best version of yourself, and it's like 10% about skills. So therefore, in order, which is a good thing, because it means you don't need to invest in like a million different courses to like up your skills. Actually, what you need to invest in is developing yourself to like increase your revenues or increase your business size, whatever you're looking to do. And I think that's where the self-development journey often starts, and it gives you a real sense of purpose every day. Because even if you're starting to be like, oh, I really just can't, I don't know what like the business is doing, I don't know where to go, it's like if you wake up and think, right, but I'm still going to show up as my best version, and I'm still going to develop myself and look at other areas I can improve, like it just gives you that real like, you know, excitement and ambition for the day. And I think that's a good way just to get through as well, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's like, I think purpose and values really like link. So you said you'd kind of been struggling with your purpose, so I think it'd be really good for you to like look at what is, because maybe that's why, because you're thinking, I know like you even said today your purpose for formation was to, you know, help like SMEs, like especially startups, a focus on female startups, really help them like get into
good time,
and maybe you've just strayed like a little bit too far from that now, that you're thinking like, well, no, this isn't what I
set it up for.
Because we always talk about the lifestyle CEO. That's like such a passion of ours, because it's got a clear purpose. We're helping like women set up their business, and that's
set up a life that they want.
Yeah, and work around like their childcare, and you know, just work for themselves and be their own boss bitch. And I think so maybe you need to do some shadow work on like our therapist now. But maybe that's why you feel like maybe your purpose is not. And it could be like tiny little adjustments.
Yes.
Like just, okay, I want a female client now.
But that's what I mean as well. It's like maybe it doesn't necessarily translate into your business right now. Like I'm not going to be like, right, all you male clients get out. Like you're paying me really well, but I don't want you anymore. But it's more like in my day, how can I make sure I'm still living my purpose, just to keep that fire alive? So it is for me, it's like, how can I improve myself maybe? So it's like, what journaling can I do? What reading can I do? And it just makes the day feel more focused, even though my work might not be quite aligned to that bigger purpose that we're all working towards. It just means the day feels more aligned to it if I'm doing little things in that day to kind of keep me focused. So it might be that, you know, you really want to improve your health and that's your purpose. Obviously your job's not going to help that, but it's like making sure you go for a walk every day or whatever. And eating well, and you just feel still like good about yourself. I mean, there's a lot of things that you can really like look into, and obviously like it's going to be overwhelming just listening to podcasts and thinking, oh my god, there's so much to like go into. But like we said, the best way to like find out these things is looking at your triggers. You could be having a conversation with your family, your partner, your boss, or your friend, and things come up and you'll feel it. Obviously everyone knows when they feel triggered and slightly anxious, or anger, or you know, like, or they react to something in a bad way, or like, you know, which doesn't really feel aligned to who they are.
And that is when you've got to stop and like take a mental note of this situation. When you get home,
journal it.
Journal. And
I think that's the best place to start, isn't it? Just start journaling and like taking notes of your thoughts.
And it's just going to be like yeah, we both find journaling I'm morning and you probably more evening.
Yeah.
Journaling every day. It's just, and sometimes I feel like I open my journal, I'm like, I don't even have anything to write. But I just start writing, and even if it's like 3 lines, 3 sentences, like at least I know. It's just keeping that routine, because when I do need to journal, oh my God, pages.
Yeah. And I think it is that, it's just and I find the reason I do it at night is because it kind of empties my brain from the day, and then you just feel like, okay, you've released it all.
Yeah.
But I think you probably do it in the morning as well. Like, you can probably do both.
I think I do it in the morning just so like I've cleared for, I know yours makes a lot of sense as well.
No, I get why you do it in the morning.
Yeah, because my journal asked me like, what went well today? And I'm like, well, it's only 7 a.m, but yeah, I got out of bed okay.
But yeah, so I think it's definitely a journey that's going to take a lifetime, but like we feel strongly that after getting at the same time, maybe looking at your habits, looking at your goals, looking at your routines, but really focusing in on that shadow work as well is a really important part of becoming the best version of yourself. But we'd love to hear how you get on, and if you've got any other tips of how you kind of delve into that shadow work. And
as always, yes, we're all ears. We want to try everything, and I think we've given lots of good tips and lots of things that we found useful. So we'd be really interested, like Christina said, to hear how you get on. But we hope you like this episode. Obviously, like, it's not always business focused. We want to be our best business and best
they're kind of the same
selves.
thing, aren't
yeah,
they?
Exactly. Like it's about giving your best self every day and feeling your best self every day.
Agreed.
So we'll I hope you enjoyed that episode. So let us know how you like it, and we'll see you next week.